Let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders here for a second. Look, obviously, the big thing for the Raiders is determining who their next head coach will be. A lot of rumors and speculation going around. But I think two under the radar moves right now have kind of given an indication of where the Raiders are going to go. Let's go right into these reports and then we'll talk about it on the other side. This first one is according to the New York Post. After several days of coaching departures, the Giants have their first new addition. Brian Daboll has hired Carmen Brasilio to be the Giants' new offensive line coach, the team announced Thursday. Brasilio held the same post with the Las Vegas Raiders the last two seasons. As Raiders fans, you guys are probably very well aware. But let's pair it with this other report, and I think we'll talk about why that matters. This other report is according to Bleacher Report. As the Las Vegas Raiders continue to decide what they're going to do as a head coach, they don't seem to want to lose defensive coordinator Patrick Graham. Per NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, the Raiders blocked another team's request to interview Graham for their vacant defensive coordinator position. Rappaport noted the decision was likely made so the Raiders can, quote, give the head coach they hire the right to decide on inherited staff members. All right, so at first glance, those kind of reports, they don't jive, right? They seem to be in conflict with each other, specifically Ian Rappaport's comments. Because if you wanted a hired head coach to have to make decisions on who you're going to use in terms of your coaching staff, why would you block the defensive coordinator but let the offensive line coach leave? The only way you do that, in my opinion, is if you are going to focus on hiring a defensive guy. So you want to protect the defensive side of the ball, and you'll let the defensive head coach that you hire decide who they're going to hire to lead the offense and then go from there. That, of course, leads into the Antonio Pierce theory, right? Because Antonio Pierce, of course, has a defensive background. To me, these two reports are an indication that Antonio Pierce is the clear front runner, and right now that Mark Davis and company are leaning 100% to hire Antonio Pierce as their next head coach. Myles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on these reports and the potential outcome of Antonio Pierce becoming the head man for Las Vegas. But first, Raiders fans in the comment section below. Look, Antonio Pierce, very popular guy, obviously did a lot of great things down the stretch for the Raiders. Give us who you want to be the next head coach for this Las Vegas football team in the comment section below. And if you appreciate this content, if you're big fans of this channel, or even if you're not a big fan and you just want to support, mid-level creators doing their thing on YouTube, make sure you check out becoming a member. You'll find a link to our membership in the description box below. But Myles, give me your thoughts on this news involving the Raiders and what it could mean long-term, specifically when it comes to finding their next head coach.
Yeah, Nick, I think this is really intriguing news, especially the Graham news. Antonio Pierce, he seems like a guy who really likes what he's doing on the defensive side of the ball. He likes all of his coaches there. And so that's why I think the blocking of Graham as the defensive coordinator going to other teams, you would want, as a defensive guy, you care about the coaches that you want on the defensive side of the ball. He already has a relationship with him. I think he's got that under wraps. And it's like you said, on the offensive side of things, you're going to pick your offensive coordinator, then that guy is going to bring in his coaches. So offensive line coach, really not that important, which in my mind, I think a lot of people's minds, you can make the leap that the Raiders are at least considering or highly thinking about Antonio Pierce being the head coach of this team. Because why else would you do that if you weren't having him as potentially the head man, the guy that's making decisions? Why would you keep certain guys that make sense to keep for him and let other ones go? Either you would let everybody go or you would keep everybody. For the dichotomy of this two sides of the ball, we know what Antonio Pierce is about. He's a defensive guy. He wants the defensive pieces to stay in place. Maybe he doesn't like exactly how the offense has been going. He's going to hire OC. That is going to get itself worked out as well. So I think it just makes sense if you line everything up. And if I'm a Raiders fan, like you asked them earlier, I want Antonio Pierce to be the coach. I'm kind of tired of letting guys slip away to go to other places and do great things. If you have somebody and they seem to be doing a good job, why waste the risk of getting another Josh McDaniels, even another John Gruden? Somebody just doesn't work out for the team and ends up leaving you in a very bad spot. Let's see what Antonio Pierce is made of, because it seems like the players like him. He had them moving, had him grooving. The team looked really good down the stretch. If it was me, I would want to keep him there, and I think the Raiders seem to be thinking the same thing as well.
And to counteract one of the arguments we're hearing, it's like, well, the Raiders are interviewing other guys for the head man, right? How do we know that Antonio Pierce is the favorite, even considering these reports? I'm reminded early on when I was working in my corporate career, I had bosses tell me they'd interview a lot of guys to fill certain positions, even if they already had an ideal target in mind, for two reasons. One, you never know if you're going to stumble across like a genius, like the greatest hire of all time. So you don't want to discount anybody. And number two, if you're the owner, if you're a guy looking to make a hiring decision, you always want to network and make connections with smart and talented people because you never know when you're going to want to leverage those connections in the future to fill other positions. For example, if the Raiders, let's say, if they're looking to interview Harbaugh, for example, for the Michigan Wolverines, right now, Harbaugh's defensive coordinator, Mike Minter, looks like a hot coaching prospect. There is a potential in the future, who knows, the Raiders may want to hire Mike Minter to be a defensive coach. Potentially, we saw a similar thing with the Baltimore Ravens. How do you start that relationship? You interview a guy like Harbaugh for head coach, even though Antonio Pierce is clearly your number one guy. You get that network connection with Harbaugh. That way, in the future, if you're trying to go after Minter, you have an in, right? You have a connection. That's how it works in the business world. It's no different in the football world. That's why we're seeing a lot of different interview targets being thrown around. But again, I think all the evidence right now is 100% signaling that the Raiders have found their next head coach, and it's going to be Antonio Pierce. I think right now the Raiders are just doing their due diligence. They're making sure there's not like the greatest hire of all time that they're about to bring in an interview. And they're also taking advantage of this opportunity to network and make connections with other people they otherwise would communicate with, which is the smart thing to do, right? It's what smart businessmen do. It's what smart organizations do. But I think based on these two reports here, protecting the defense, not really caring so much about the offensive side of the ball, is an indication that Antonio Pierce is their guy. And I don't think it'll be long before he's announced as the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.